Hey y'all, so today we're going to talk about 10mm and why it's awesome. But before I get into that, I want to say if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out, helps me fight the algorithm. I really appreciate it, doesn't cost anything. Also, down below, coupon codes for the companies that help me out. Into the video. Now, I got a chance to go to Trick or Treat 2022 on Saturday. It was a pretty awesome event. And I got the chance to once again carry my Colt Delta Elite. Got to open carry it for the first time ever. Actually, the first time I ever open carried. But pretty awesome event, and I got to shoot this a little bit. And it reminded me how awesome the gun is. So I'm going to do my top 5 reasons why you should EDC carry a 10mm firearm. Let's get into it. Now, number one is, of course, the easy throwaway that you hear all the time. 10mm is a very powerful semi-automatic cartridge. It's a very powerful handgun cartridge. There is a ton of cartridges more powerful than it. You always hear about the different, 500 Express, 500 Magnum, 50 AE, some of the big high-end, high-power cartridges. And of course, they will usually outdo 10mm, but there's one thing that 10mm has that none of those have, and that is, at the end of the day, 10mm is the most powerful mass-produced semi-automatic cartridge, at least that I know of, on the market. Put down below if there's something that's mass-produced, keyword mass-produced, and more powerful than 10mm. There's a lot of powerful cartridges out there, like 357 SIG, 45 ACP, but at the end of the day, 10mm is more powerful, has more energy than pretty much all of those cartridges. So 10mm, if you're looking for a cartridge, and at the end of the day, obviously everybody's like, well, what do you need more power for? You can carry 22 and be just fine. At the end of the day, having more ballistic energy is never a bad thing if you can handle it. Which sneak peek to number 5. Number 2 is because there's a ton of guns in 10mm. Now, back in the day, you could get a Delta Elite, you could find a Bren 10, probably not, but they're out there, and there was a couple other guns out there, but 10mm guns were kind of hard to find. Um, that's not the case anymore. There's a lot of guns, even smaller guns, like the Glock 29, that are in 10mm, and there's more coming. That's the key thing, is there's more coming, because Smith & Wesson just announced their M&P 10mm, right? Other companies are probably going to follow suit, because 10mm is becoming more and more popular lately, so you're going to see more and more guns. Want large capacity? They do double stack 1911s in 10mm. You can get 15 plus rounds in, no problem. Want smaller gun? Again, stuff like the Glock 29. You've got a few others, I believe, that are smaller framed than something like this. So you've got plenty of options for 10mm. And again, more coming. Now, for number 3, it's not going anywhere. The cartridge has been around since like 1983, designed by Colonel Jeff Cooper, which if you don't know who that is, I'd highly recommend going and learning about him, because it's very interesting. And he pretty much gave us the 4 firearm safety rules that we all now know and hopefully love. They're definitely a good set of rules to abide by. But basically, so it's been around since the 80s, and it's not going anywhere. It's had a long enough time for it to mature and come into its own. And unlike some of the newer cartridges you hear about, like the 30 Super Carry, 327 Magnum, stuff like that, that it's not necessarily dead, but there's very few guns in it, and it really doesn't seem to be picking up any steam, because it's kind of filling holes in the market that's not necessarily a hole, it's more of just a gap that maybe didn't need to be filled. 10mm is not going anywhere. You're going to see it for a long time to come, I'm quite sure, because again, with it being the pretty much most powerful mass-produced semi-automatic cartridge that's easily available, unless you come up with something that's better than 10mm and also able to fit in a wide range of guns, such as the 1911 and Glocks and all that, you're really not going to knock 10mm out of circulation. So that's number 3. Number 4 is because it's flat shooting. 10mm is well regarded as being a fairly accurate cartridge that shoots fairly flat. Why that's important? Because, well, point of aim and all that is affected with distance and all that. When you have a cartridge that shoots fairly flat, it's much easier to make longer range shots. Now, in a self-defense situation, generally you're going to be fairly close to the point where you probably don't even need sights. That's not always the case. We talk about the 40-yard shot made recently in the one self-defense situation. Um, when it comes to a distance like that, well, having something that shoots a little bit further and straighter comes in handy. So if you're looking for a good, accurate cartridge, something like 10 millimeter is definitely something to look at. Now, my fifth and final reason why 10 millimeter is awesome is because the government hates it. So, condensing a longer story into a short video, long story short, 10 millimeter came out. The FBI was looking for a new cartridge. They were trying to ditch 9 millimeter. And what ended up happening was they skipped 45 ACP and went right to the hot new caliber 10 millimeter. Problem was a lot of agents could not handle it, so they started downloading it a little bit, and then you kind of get like the 10 mil FBI load, which turned into 40 Smith & Wesson. We all know what 40 Smith & Wesson is, steaming garbage. And basically, because of that, 10 millimeter kind of fell out of favor a little bit because everyone wanted the hot new 40 Smith & Wesson because, hey, it's what the FBI is carrying, and you want to be a cool kid and carry the same thing the feds carry. You should have stuck with 10 millimeter because 40 Smith & Wesson is dead and 10 millimeter is coming back. But that is my final reason why 10 millimeter is awesome, because it was too awesome for the government to handle and they had to neuter it. So that's my video. Put down below, do you like 10 millimeter? What's your favorite reason for liking 10 millimeter? Do you hate 10 millimeter? Is 40 Smith & Wesson really all it's cracked up to be? It's not, but put down below if it is, and have a good day.